the moment America chose its financial future. It began with a crossroads, a moment when the country, battered by crises and shaped by decades of experiment, finally faced a question it had avoided for generations. What kind of financial system should define its future? The decision would not come through panic or collapse, but through a rare moment of clarity, when the past and future stood side by side, demanding an answer. To understand why this turning point still matters, we must return to a nation exhausted by instability. For decades, America had swung between extremes: consolidation, decentralization, expansion, contraction, periods of wild speculation, followed by years of harsh correction. Each generation believed it found the answer, only to watch the system fail in new and unexpected ways. The public had grown weary of cycles that promised prosperity but delivered uncertainty. Amid this fatigue, momentum began to build around a new idea, not radical, not glamorous, but quietly revolutionary. The nation needed a financial structure that could grow with its ambitions, protect its citizens, and respond to crises without collapsing under pressure. A system not defined by the strongest bank or boldest entrepreneur, but by shared responsibility, coordination, and stability. The shift didn't begin with a single law or institution. It began with questions whispered in committee rooms, debated in academic circles, and printed in newspapers that urged readers to imagine something beyond the status quo. What if the country could create a foundation strong enough to stop panics before they spread? What if financial power could be balanced instead of concentrated? What if the system could be predictable, transparent, and resilient? The early beats of this transformation started quietly. Policymakers examined failures from the past. Economists mapped out new models. Bankers debated whether a unified approach would strengthen or weaken them. Citizens, still recovering from financial wounds, demanded a future that felt safe rather than speculative. Bit by bit, a vision took shape, a financial framework capable of supporting a modern nation. One designed not to chase endless growth or punish risk-takers, but to keep the entire system standing even when individual parts faltered. Yet even in these early stages, conflict loomed, because choosing a new financial future meant letting go of the old one. It meant challenging assumptions, redistributing authority, and reimagining the very nature of trust and stability. The path forward was forming, but its consequences, economic, political, and emotional, were only beginning to reveal themselves. The momentum toward reform grew stronger, but with it came resistance that was equally determined. What some saw as a necessary evolution, others viewed as an attack on long-held freedoms. The quiet discussions that had shaped the early vision now spilled into the public sphere, where every proposal faced scrutiny, doubt, and fierce debate. Bankers who had survived decades of instability questioned whether a new system would truly offer protection or simply replace one set of risks with another. Many feared losing the independence that allowed them to support local economies on their own terms. They argued that a centralized structure, no matter how well-intentioned, would erode the flexibility that had enabled regional banks to serve their communities. Policymakers countered with equal passion. They pointed to the long history of bank runs, failed institutions, and devastating panics that had cost citizens their livelihoods. A system built on fragmented authority, they argued, had repeatedly shown its limits. Without coordination, without shared responsibility, the nation would always be one rumor, one failure, one shock away from another collapse. The public found itself caught between these competing visions. Some supported reform wholeheartedly, longing for a financial world that no longer felt like a gamble. Others distrusted the idea of centralizing power, fearing that the government or any single institution might overstep its bounds. Their unease surfaced in letters to newspapers, in town hall meetings, and in late-night conversations across kitchen tables, where families weighed the promises against the risks. Meanwhile, the economy carried the marks of past crises. Businesses remained cautious. Banks held higher reserves than before, but that caution slowed growth. Farmers struggled to secure loans during unpredictable seasons. Industrialists hesitated to invest in long-term projects. The nation operated in a strange limbo, no longer willing to trust the old system, not yet ready to embrace the new one. Inside legislative halls, the conflict intensified. Committees debated the scope of reform. Experts testified about the need for a coordinated authority that could provide liquidity in moments of crisis. Opponents warned that such power, once created, might be impossible to contain. The arguments grew sharper, more ideological, and more personal. This was no longer just policy. It was a battle over identity, who America was, and who it wanted to become. The emotional tension deepened as each side delivered increasingly urgent warnings. Supporters insisted the nation could not endure another decade of instability. Critics insisted reform would open the door to federal dominance over private enterprise. Neither side was willing to yield, because both believed the cost of losing would be catastrophic. By now, the crisis was no longer financial. It was psychological. The nation was struggling to reconcile its past with its future, its desire for stability with its fear of centralized power. The old system felt inadequate, but letting it go meant stepping into the unknown. The buildup was unmistakable. The pressure was rising, and the question hanging over the nation grew heavier with each passing day. Would America choose safety over autonomy or autonomy over safety? The moment of decision was drawing near. The conflict reached a point where neither side could retreat. What began as intellectual debate had transformed into a struggle that touched every corner of a nation. Banks, businesses, lawmakers, and ordinary citizens all felt the weight of a decision that seemed too large to fully comprehend and too important to ignore. The hearings grew louder, more heated. Supporters of reform warned that without a unified financial backbone, the next crisis would strike harder than any before it. They pointed to decades of turmoil, panics that wiped out savings, failures that destroyed entire towns, cycles of expansion and collapse that left families fearful of the very institutions meant to protect them. To these advocates, modernization wasn't optional. It was survival. Opponents fired back with equal force. They argued that centralization was a threat disguised as progress. A new authority, one powerful enough to steady the financial system, could also overreach, distort markets, and assume influence far beyond its intended purpose. They feared that once such power existed, it would be impossible to restrain, and in their eyes, the freedom to operate independently, even imperfectly, was better than stability and force from above. As the debate intensified, the emotional stakes soared. Banks braced with consequences, unsure whether reform would elevate them or diminish them. Some institutions saw opportunity in the promise of liquidity support and coordinated stability. Others feared losing their identity, swallowed by a structure too large to navigate. Executives gathered in boardrooms, voices tight with worry, each recognizing that the decision would reshape the financial landscape permanently. Beyond the halls of power, the public felt the strain as well. Businesses delayed hiring, uncertain which financial future they'd be operating within. Families grew anxious, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it. Newspapers published conflicting opinions almost daily, some urging bold action, others warning against irreversible change. The nation seemed to exist in a suspended moment, balanced between past and future, unsure which direction was safer. Political alliances fractured. Long-standing friendships broke under the weight of competing visions. Lawmakers who once agreed on everything now stood firmly opposed, their voices rising with urgency as the final vote drew closer. The nation had debated economic questions before, but this time felt different. This was no incremental adjustment, no temporary fix. This was a choice that would define the architecture of American finance. The buildup reached its emotional peak when a series of regional bank failures reignited fear. Although small, the collapses sent a jolt through the country. People lined up outside local branches, seeking reassurance. Businesses scrambled to secure operating funds. The incidents didn't result in full-scale panic, but they reminded everyone of the system's fragility. And in that moment, the cost of inaction became painfully clear. The pressure became unbearable. Both sides knew the vote would determine far more than the structure of banking. It would determine the philosophy of American financial life, whether the nation would continue navigating crises with fragmented tools or place its future in a coordinated system that demanded trust and demanded sacrifice. The breaking point was approaching, and the nation stood poised on the edge of a transformation decades in the making. The climax arrived in a chamber heavy with tension. After years of debate, Months of hearings and weeks of uncertainty. Lawmakers cast the votes that would decide the nation's financial destiny. One by one, the tallies appeared, not dramatic, not loud, but carrying a weight that would echo far beyond the room. When the final count was announced, the decision was clear. America would build a new financial foundation, unified, coordinated, and built to withstand the storms that had shattered the past. The nation had chosen its future. The reaction was immediate and intense. Supporters celebrated, convinced the country had finally taken a step it should have taken decades earlier. They spoke of stability, resilience, and the promise of a system capable of preventing the destructive panics that had haunted the nation for generations. For them, the vote represented hope, a chance to break free from cycles that had destroyed livelihoods and undermined faith in the financial world. Opponents responded with equal passion. Some warned that the new structure granted too much power to a central authority. Others argued the decision marked the end of true financial independence. They feared the new institution could become a tool for political influence or economic manipulation. Their concerns were not whispers. They were loud, public, and deeply felt. But regardless of how people viewed the decision, one truth was unmistakable. The old era was gone. The aftermath unfolded with a strange mixture of uncertainty and determination. Banks prepared for a world with new rules. Businesses adjusted to a system that promised greater stability, but demanded adaptation. Citizens watched closely, wondering whether this new model would protect their savings or reshape their lives in ways they could not yet predict. Yet beneath the uncertainty lay something powerful, a sense of possibility. For the first time in generations, Americans could imagine a financial system capable of standing firm in moments of crisis, one that balanced independence with cooperation, ambition with caution. The nation had not chosen perfection. It had chosen progress. The resolution revealed a lesson both sobering and hopeful. Systems do not evolve when everything is calm. They evolve when the pressure becomes too great to ignore. America did not build its new financial future because the past was easy, but because the past was too painful to repeat. And so, a new chapter began. Quietly at first, then steadily, then confidently. As the country stepped into this new era, it carried with it the wisdom earned through decades of hardship. Stability is not the absence of risk, but the presence of structure strong enough to withstand it. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.